3.5? Yeah, 3.5 and then another hour getting lost for some of us on the way to JLR this morning. In fact, you guys beat us. When did you arrive? Here. About an hour ago. Anyway, so genuinely, it's amazing to be here. So thank you all for coming today. My name's Andy Cockgreave. I'm technical evangelist at Tableau, and my job is to help sort of spread the mission of Tableau and what we do and help people see and understand their data. And part of that role for me is managing the Zen Master program. The Zen Masters are our customers who really represent the culture of Tableau and the mission of Tableau in sort of huge enthusiasm for sharing their skills with people like you in the community. So today we've got one of our Zen Masters, Andy Kriebel, who will introduce himself doing a 45-minute keynote. And then we're going to follow that up. We'll get all 5 Zen Masters here. They wanted to come on in the beanbags, but I suspect after the travel today, they'll probably just fall asleep on stage, so we're going to do it on high stools. So the way we've done this in the last couple of days has been we want it to be really interactive, so I'm going to be asking you the questions as well, so hopefully you'll all get involved in that. Is anybody not yet an official or a fully paid up Tableau customer? Wow. Thank you all for coming, that's amazing. So if you're still sort of in that 2-week trial phase, then we've got some good news. You can go to this URL, which we can share with you later. In fact, we could probably write it on that whiteboard as well. And you'll get an email to this, but this is an extended trial that's related to this event. So if you want to have a bit more to try out Tableau and see if it's going to work for you, go and check out that. Right, okay. Yeah, so here we go. We're starting in Edinburgh, Leeds, Birmingham, tomorrow London, and London, and then it's all over. So it's been an amazing week. So these are the 5 Tableau Zen Masters who are here today, and we'll introduce them all later. There are 21 Zen Masters in the world at the moment, and it's a 1-year program. We select new Zen Masters each year by looking at just the pool of people we see in the community who are just doing amazing blogs or running user groups or just doing incredibly skillful stuff in a passionate way, just as I said, to help the community. So 5 of them are here in the UK, and we thought it would be a good idea to bring them out around the country to meet everybody, to meet as many people as we could. And that's what we're doing. So here's the agenda, and with that, start thinking about your questions for the Q&A panel. But I'm really excited to see this presentation. This is a presentation Andy's done at a conference in the US. It's a really, well, I'm sure it's going to be really amazing. It's about a really good topic, which is something really inspiring and creative. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Zen Master Andy Kriebel.
Yeah, look at that. I had to scare him. This actually isn't the presentation that I gave in Las Vegas. So Andy has already told you one lie. I'm going to make sure this is a little bit longer. Oh. Sorry. Thank you, Craig. AV Tech in the back. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you guys today about a project that I did with Jeff Schaefer called Dear Data 2 and how this helped me learn Tableau, and actually a little bit about myself along the way. But first, as you can tell, I am American. I've been here for a little bit over a year. And we were the original Brexiters, so as we just celebrated on Monday. And I apologize for this. This is my family. This was taken recently at a pub in London. The kids love going to pubs. They are normal despite their looks. And they actually moved over here last year. They left the US on July 4th, so we now refer to that as Dependence Day rather than Independence Day. And this is my blog, VizWiz.com. Just got the 6-letter domain, which I was very excited about. Thank you to some data viz company in Czechoslovakia. I think that doesn't exist anymore, but wherever they were, somewhere in Eastern Europe. They sold it to me for very cheap, so I was very thankful for that. And I do a lot of projects. I blog all the time. So many of you participated in, who did not participate in Makeover Monday this morning? Just a few of you. Okay, everybody else did. So if I ask the opposite question, everybody else will raise their hands. Is that right? Who did Makeover Monday this morning? Okay, that's good. And the guy in the pink shirt isn't paying attention, so that's okay. He still isn't, even though I'm talking about him. Okay. So I do Makeover Monday. I also do Tableau Tip Tuesday, where I record videos of things that I learn about Tableau, little tips and tricks. And sometimes I don't get enough Makeover Monday, so I do WTF Wednesday. I think that's a pretty apropos acronym for it. And then I recently started FFS Friday. So, okay, that was supposed to be funnier than I thought it was, but okay. And sometimes I just like creating data visualizations. So this is one I did for my friend Paul Chapman when we were looking at some prescription data, some publicly available prescription data, and he happened to latch on to anal plugs and anal probes when we were doing the analysis. So hence the title, Does Cheeky Chappy Need to Plug or Flush? So he didn't really like this very much. So imagine, that's how I make friends. But the inspiration for Dear Data 2 actually came from Georgia and Stephanie, the women behind the original Dear Data project. Has anybody heard of the original Dear Data project? Okay, it's absolutely fascinating and really, really inspirational. The idea is pretty simple. Each week for an entire year, you collect and measure a particular type of data about your life. So it's a quantified self project, more or less. And then you use that data to make a hand-drawn postcard, and you stick it in the mail. And it goes to, Stephanie lives here in London, or not here, but in the UK, and she mails it to Georgia in New York, and vice versa. So they cross the ocean. And it just happened that Jeff and I were both across the ocean at the same time. So in essence, you're trying to sketch things about your life and learn a bit more about yourself. So Jeff and I started this project in April 2015, so obviously we're finished now. And he approached me when I was probably in a bit of a weak moment. I had just moved to London. My family was still back in the US, so I had 3 months. I wasn't really doing much. What's another project, right? But little did I know how much of a time suck this was going to become. But what was really great about it is I really learned a lot about myself, and I learned a ton about Tableau. But be warned, if you take on a project like this, it is a lot of work to draw postcards, a lot more than you think. So why do we do this project? Well, we're trying to capture the life around us through sketching hidden patterns in the data. We had a lot of fun learning about each other, though I'm very, very confident that Jeff is absolutely terrified of my life at this point. So I also noticed that doing this project actually consciously changes my behavior. So for example, one week when we were tracking negative emotions, I felt sad the whole week, because you're consciously thinking about the sad moments you're trying to capture. But no matter the topic, those data points would sort of come to the forefront of your mind. So I'm always wondering, did that bias my results for those weeks? I'll never know the answer to that. So I don't know if the things I was observing are my normal behavior, or if it's just because I was more conscious about them. Okay. But we also wanted to learn a bit of Tableau along the way. So I did an opposite process for Jeff, and I'm going to walk you through my step-by-step process. Jeff would actually create the postcard first, and then try to build it in Tableau. Whereas on the other hand, I wanted to try to push the boundaries of Tableau and learn more about how to use it. So I was able to do some things that I never thought possible in Tableau, and I see Tableau more now as a drawing canvas rather than a charting tool. So I'm going to take you through my, sort of 5-step process. Oops, sorry. Some of my pages are out of line here. All right, here we go. So the first thing we do is each week we pick a topic, and we basically picked the same topics that the ladies did. So we didn't want to try to come up with ideas ourselves, so we just mimicked what they were doing. So the topics would range maybe from from what we wear, to what we drink, from our positive emotions, or that was our negative emotions, and sometimes we just paid attention to the things that we hear around us. You guys aren't nearly as funny as I thought. Okay, so English. Yeah, maybe it is me. Yeah, I'm the funniest person I know. Okay. Oh wait, sorry, I went too far. And then what I would do is I would collect the data, and I tried to automate as much of this as possible because this is really, really time consuming. So whenever possible, if I could find an app to do that for me, I would do it. So a lot of the time I just ended up manually recording things on my phone. And then the next thing I would do is analyze everything in Tableau. I would just use Tableau as like a data exploration tool, which I think is where the real power of Tableau is. You can do lots of things really quickly and try to find insights in your data. And I would typically end up with lots of bar charts or maps or things like that, line charts. And then I would design what I called a Tableau postcard. So how can I create the postcard that I want, the final look, but actually do it in Tableau? So these are some examples of some things that I created in Tableau. And the idea was to sort of, can I actually make Tableau do things that I didn't think I was able to do before, like this example here. And then the last step is obviously to draw the postcard. So I'm a terrible artist, so it helped me get less bad. And I realized about 12 weeks into the project that I should be scanning my postcards for pictures rather than trying to hold your phone and not get the shadow in the picture. So I need the cards back from Jeff so that I can rescan the ones that I didn't scan in the first place. So the drawing part actually took a lot of time. And then the last thing was to send it to America, but don't forget the stamp. So, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a little bit. So it would take about 1 to 2 weeks to arrive in America. And we actually only had one get torn up the whole time, which none of Jeff's got torn up, only one of mine did. So I feel like that was a pretty good win. And but we sort of realized later on we probably should have been tracking shipping times along the way. That would have given us another data set, but too late for that now. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through several examples of some things that I did in Tableau and 4 particular case studies, or use cases, I guess. And I need to switch to my notes so I don't forget anything. So the first one has to do with the London pigeon. Does everybody know the London pigeon, the infamous London pigeon, right? Okay, so I'm going to flip over to Tableau for this. Okay, so I have this fear that one day the mighty pigeon is going to attack all of us. And in London, there are a lot of them. So for this particular week, week 34, the topic was urban wildlife. And I knew immediately what I wanted to track. So I walk from Waterloo to near St. Paul's every day, and you see all the pigeons. So I thought what I would do is record every time I saw a pigeon. Doesn't seem that hard, right? Well, there are a lot of pigeons. So my walk took about 2 or 3 times as long. So the first thing that I wanted to do was actually map my walk to work. And I do this using the Moves app. Does anybody use Moves? Has anybody heard of Moves? Okay. It tracks, well, Louis does now, even though it doesn't work on his phone. But, so what I wanted to do is just understand, my patterns of walking to work. So I can just quickly build a map. I'm going to go ahead and change my mark type to a line. And then I'm just going to put every date on the path shelf. And I can easily see my walk to work. But maybe I want to color these by the day of the week. All right, so now I can see I generally walk the same path to work every week. I like to go up to the South Bank and then across the river just because I like seeing the river and walking along that. But do notice that on Friday, I deviated my walk. I went, what's that called? The cut. Yeah, I always forget the name of that. I walked along the cut, and that's because there's a Sainsbury's local there that makes really hot pain au chocolat. So I made a little deviation on the way to work that day. Okay, so what I wanted to do is then take that and combine that with my, my fear of the pigeon. So I decided to track where I saw the pigeons. So to do that, again, I just mapped the location where I was every single time that I saw a pigeon. So I'll just go ahead and add the postcode on there. And I can see, let's see, how many times did I see pigeons in each of these postcodes? Oops, wrong spot. And I can go ahead and make these a little bit bigger so you can see them. And you can see that primarily most of the pigeons like to hang out at the end of Millennium Bridge. I don't know why, but maybe that's because where all the tourists are. So they steal everybody's food. And actually Tate Modern's right there too, and you see a lot of people eating in the park out there. And you'll notice I have a nice Mapbox map in the background. It's not a Tableau map, so if you're ever curious how to add Mapbox, those kind of maps into your visualizations, it's actually very, very easy. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to understand for each day of the week how many did I see in each of these locations. So despite what it says on my blog, sometimes I do use pie charts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the day of the week on the color. And if I can remember how to do it, so those are just equally distributed, so I did something wrong. No, I think that's right. And I need to put how many on the angle as well. Okay, so now you can see, for each day of the week, where did I see the pigeons? And pretty much everywhere, right? They're the same locations every day of the week. It doesn't really seem like it matters that much. But then one of the other things I recorded was, well, how do those pigeons react to me? Are they scared of me or am I scared of them, right? So how do they react when I get close to them? So I could easily just put reaction on there. So either they ignored me or they flew away. And then how many of those happened? So 43 times the pigeon ignored me and 17 times it flew away. So I tracked 60 pigeons that week. But what I like to give it a little more context. So 72% of the times, the pigeons didn't give a damn if I was there or not. So I was obviously much more scared of them than they were of me. Okay, so from there, I created the postcard. Let me go ahead and put this in presentation mode. And this is what you do is you put the key on the front of the postcard. And in this case, I just color-coded it. I tried to match it close to Tableau as I could. And you'll notice I have this down here. I have the reaction. So I just put a straight line if the pigeon stood its ground, or I put an arrow on it if the pigeon flew away. So then I just turn that into the postcard. So I put north, south, east, west, so Jeff would have an idea of the geography. And you can see I sort of just clustered them all kind of in that general location where they were. And you can see only not very many of them fly away. And then what I did is I created a tissue paper overlay. So Jeff would have a little more context. So I created a map of London and put that on so Jeff could lay it over top of the postcard, which I thought I was pretty happy with how this turned out until I saw that I put Temple in the Thames, so the tube station. But Jeff doesn't know that, so don't tell him. But what was really interesting is what happened after here is when I always go and I take a picture of myself putting the postcard in the postbox. Well, I put an envelope together so that I could mail the tissue paper and the postcard together. And I went to take the picture of myself putting the postcard in the postbox, because you don't say mailbox here. And then I took the picture and I put the postcard right into the mailbox, dropped in, and I'm like, oh crap, no stamp. So I send Jeff a message and I say, hey Jeff, I got this postcard, but it's supposed to be in 2 parts. It doesn't have a stamp. It'll probably be an extra couple weeks before it gets to you. Well, remarkably, about 5 days later, record time, he sends me a message, says, got the postcard. So apparently you can send a postcard overseas with no stamp. Don't tell the Royal Mail I said that. So I put the other piece in the mail then, and he got the whole thing. So I thought that was a pretty interesting story that the thing still got there. Okay, so the next story. All right, so the next story, oops. All right. So the next story is a little bit of a sad story. So after the Tableau conference in Vegas, I had a conversation with Paul Benoob, and we were talking about the project and kind of the opportunity it was giving me to learn about myself. Well, in week 31, I was tracking all the positive feelings I had, and I assumed that I would see nothing but great results. I've got a great job, I've got a great family, I live in a really nice area, we live in an amazing town. But that's why you track the data, because sometimes you see things you didn't realize. I think I need to flip back over to Tableau. Okay. I need to exit out of that first. And I'll make all of these things available to you guys later as well. Okay, so what I wanted to do was, the first thing I wanted to do was just look at how many positive feelings I experienced each day. So I'm going to just go ahead and add weekday to the columns. And I'm going to put the number of positive feelings in the rows. I'm going to go ahead and change that to a bar chart. I guess I'll turn the labels on, why not? And then what I want to do is I'm going to duplicate this field, and I'm going to make it a running total, because I want to know how many positive feelings I had for the whole week. Then I'm going to make it a dual axis, synchronize them, and then make this one a line. And then for the tooltips, for the labels, I'm just gonna label the end of the line. So what I was able to see is that overall for the week, it looked pretty steady. Wednesday and Saturday were a little bit more. I don't remember exactly what I was doing those days. But I thought 48 feels like a pretty good number, so that's a good start. But then what I wanted to do was break this down by morning and afternoon. So I'm going to just go ahead and duplicate the sheet. I'm going to put the morning and the evening on color. And then I'll go ahead and make this a percent of total. And I want to do it using in the afternoon. So you can see most of the positive feelings I had were in the evening. So that's good, probably because I'm with my family. Maybe I wasn't with my family. I'm not sure where I was that week, but I should have tracked some other things as well. And then I can go ahead and turn on my grand totals. So put my row grand totals on. And you see over the course of the week, 62% of my positive feelings were in the evening, and 37.5 of them were, I don't know how I had a half a feeling, but maybe that's just the way that I am. Okay, so then I thought, okay, well, who am I with? So what I wanted to know is who am I having the most positive feelings with? So for this one, I went ahead and I grouped everybody together, or I didn't group them together. I looked at who they were, and then I'm going to go ahead and look at the number of positive feelings I had with each person, and then I always like to sort my bar charts. And then what I want to do is I'm going to add with whom to the color, and you can see that most of the time I had the most positive feelings when I was by myself. So I don't know what that says, but then I started looking at my family, and I noticed a big discrepancy between a couple of the kids. So Oscar and Elizabeth are my twins, and I had the least number of positive feelings with them for the week. So that kind of bothered me, and that's one of these things that I talked earlier about how when I was tracking negative emotions, I had a really negative week. Well, this week I felt very positive all week because I was tracking positive emotions until I started looking at the data, and then I got really sad. So so these are my twins down here. So they had a very small percentage of the things that I learned. So so some of the things I learned were be intentional, make more time with your kids. So again, a nice positive outcome from this project. So what I wanted to do from there for the postcard was to create like a hub and spoke diagram, and you'll understand what I mean in a minute. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just add a filter for my the top three people. And then, let's see, so I want to go ahead and stick the X in the columns, the Y in the rows, and then the with whom in the columns. Okay, I'm going to start hiding some things here to clean the visualization up. Okay, so right now we just see 3 dots, not particularly useful. And then what I want to do is change my mark type to a line. I already did that, so it's obviously cheating. And then I want to turn on my markers so that I get a nice little dot. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Turn on lines on the end. And I want to go ahead and put the path on the path. So this just helps me draw lines between the people. And then I'm going to put with whom on color. Okay, so this shows me that the top 3 were Michael, my wife, and I categorized everybody together in the family. So, but this only is just showing 2 points, so I need to look at every possible data point. So I'm going to go ahead and put every date on the detail, and now I get a nice little diagram. I'm going to go ahead and sort these, descending by the number of positive feelings. Okay, so you can see my son Michael is there. The reason I'm only looking at 3 of them right now is because I have to do this twice. So let's see. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add 0 to the axis here. Let's see. I think I put it there. That's right. And then I want to make that a dual axis. Maybe not. Wrong spot. All right. Excellent. This is when you start failing on a demo, even though you've practiced it multiple times. So let's go ahead and take that back off the color. And then on this one, I want to remove all of these fields. and I end up with just 1 on there, and I'm going to go ahead and put the positive feelings on that. And sorry, I meant to leave that on the color. And then what I'll do on the size is I'll just increase the size there. So there we go. So now you can see who I had the most positive feelings with. And then maybe in the circles, I'll go ahead and put their name on there. And let me center those. And then I could even put on the number of positive feelings on the label. So I get 2 things there. And then maybe what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and make this nice and big. So maybe make it like 16 point, bold, something like that. So it takes a little while to get the colors just right. I don't remember what I did in the end. And then from there, I just duplicate this and just swap out my top 3 for the bottom 3. And I see the colors for them. And then I throw them together into a dashboard. So I've got my top 3, my bottom 3. Go ahead and hide both the titles, delete all of this. And now I can see who I had the most positive and negative feelings with. Oops, I messed this up. So this should be on a fixed from 1 to 10. And so should this one. Let's fix that from 1. I'm doing this because I want them all to be the same size. Okay, so let me go back over here. Oops. Let's see, so let's undo that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you can see that lowly Oscar really got the shaft this week. So replicating this onto a postcard was pretty straightforward because all you're really trying to do is draw circles, but that's remarkably hard unless you have, so I went and bought stencils, so that helped because at first when I was doing this project, I was using like coins to draw circles. I'm like, why don't I just go to the store and buy a stencil kit? So anyway, some of the things you learn. So again, the front of the postcard gives Jeff an explanation about how to read it. And then the back of the postcard looks very similar to the front of the postcard. Okay, so, but what I was really thankful for in this particular week is how the power of this the power that this little project brought into my life. It's helped me recognize areas where I need to improve, and for that I'll forever be grateful. So let me switch back over to our story I want to tell you about. For week 31. For week 24, when the topic came around, what was the topic this week? It was, I think it was just, doors. It says it right there, doors. And I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So when we lived in California, before we moved here, we lived in a neighborhood that had a homeowners association. And what that means is every door looks exactly the same. They're all black doors. And one of the things I noticed when we first moved to Kingston was how colorful all of the doors were. So what I did was I went ahead and surveyed the neighborhood. So this was a chance for me to spend some time with my daughter. So I asked her to walk with me. And I drew a little map of the streets around us. And as we walked the streets, she would tell me what the door colors were. And I would write them all down. Got lots of really weird looks from the neighbors because there's this guy walking around with a notepad looking at their house. So that was really interesting. Nobody called the police, so that was good. And then what I did was I put all of it into Excel. And as I was putting it into Excel, I realized that I forgot to write down the house numbers. So out we went again. And my daughter only made it about halfway down the first street before she turned and went back. And the neighbors thought that was even more disturbing to see me a second time walking around. So I had to go by myself, survey all the streets again, and write down all of the street numbers. And then from that point, what I did is I used a tool called Batch Geocoder to give me the latitude and longitude for every single house. So what I need to do now is flip over to Tableau, and I'll sort of show you how I did this. This was actually very, very easy. So I just put the latitude and longitude, and you see I used a different kind of background map this time. And then I'm just going to add the address to the detail, and now I get every single house. And then from there, I just take the door color and put that on color, and I'm done. That's all there is to it. Very, very simple. So let me go ahead and hide this, because if you can't tell that black is black, then that's not my fault. So I tried to choose a background. I initially started with the default Tableau maps, but they didn't have, when you get down to this level of detail, they don't have the street names. So I created a custom map in Mapbox and tried to make it very just black and white so it's easy to read, because I wanted Jeff to know when he received the postcard where we lived. I didn't mark our house on here, though. Okay, so from there, what I wanted to do is I wanted to look at a summary of the streets. So basically, how many do we have of each color on each street? So I can go ahead and put the street in the columns. And then from there, I could put the address on the detail. And you see I get a nice little block for each one. And then I just take the door color and put it on color. So now I could see every house in the street. And then from there, I just threw them together in a dashboard. So I put the map here. Oops, I don't know why that's there. And then I put this over here. And I have a nice little dashboard that I could share with Jeff that shows both of them together. So I thought that turned out pretty good. I was really happy with that. So what I wanted to do from here was draw it on the postcard, and this was really, really difficult. Obviously, drawing the key was pretty easy. I just drew a couple street blocks, and I mean, how hard is it to read a map, right? But it took me 5 or 6 times to get the postcard right because it was actually harder to draw the streets than I realized because they're not like perfect rectangles and things like that. So finally, I just kind of gave up and just left it and thought it was good enough. But I did feel a bit like a city planner or a civil engineer when I was doing this because I'm kind of drawing street map like an architect sort of thing. But what I really like is the really clean look of this. I think it looks, I'll put it in and make it a little easier for you to see. I just think it's really easy to see, and it's easy. What I really like about this is it shows how colorful my neighborhood is, which is what I was going for. And I included some directions in here so Jeff would know what is where. So Richmond to the north, Kingston to the south, the Thames to the west, and London to the northeast. So, and Jeff said that this was his favorite postcard of the entire project. Okay, so the last story I want to share with you guys is about the data school. These are kind of like my children. So the first group of consultants to go through the data school, they love their donuts. And every Friday, they would remind me that I had to bring donuts into the data school. So what they didn't know was that I was actually tracking their donut consumption. So I would watch what each one of them would eat, and I would keep it all in a spreadsheet. But I also noticed after their first week that they all were sitting in the same seats every day. So I started making them change seats as well. And most of them took pretty well to it, except for Pablo, who's on the upper right with the weird hat on, and Damiana, who's right here. So Pablo, he liked to sit up near the TV to my left, but I thought that was okay because he would make my coffee for me. And then Damiana, on the other hand, she would get really angry if somebody sat in her seat. So one day I made Pablo go sit in her seat, and he was really, really reluctant to do it. He said, "Coach, I don't know if that's a very good idea. She'll get really mad." And she was the last one in that day. And as soon as she steps in the door, she just starts wagging her finger and she goes, "Pablo, get out of my seat." And within 3 seconds, he goes, "Coach Andy made me do it." So he totally ratted me out. So I make sure I point that out to him all the time. But one of the other things I didn't realize is I was tracking where they were sitting every day as well. And I continue to do that now that we're in the third group of the data school. So to kind of help me with this, what I did was I created a mock-up in PowerPoint. So we have a slightly angled table. You can see so the TV is at the wide end, so it's easy for people to see around each other. But doing this in PowerPoint actually allowed me to do a couple things. It let me save these images as circles so I could use them as shapes. But it also allowed me I could save the table as a background image. And then I could use the rulers that are in PowerPoint to figure out what the XY coordinates should be for each person. So I was able to take those XY coordinates and create 2 simple calculations that say where to place each person. So pretty straightforward. Okay, so let me flip over to Tableau. And this one's pretty neat. So the first thing that I had to do was add the background image. So I go up to Map, and then Background Images. And you can see I've already created it here. And let me edit it and show you what it looks like. So you just upload the image, and then you tell it kind of where to position the table. So, and then as soon as you put these 2 required fields into the view, it'll show up automatically. So I'll go ahead and stick the X in the columns, stick the Y in the rows, and look at that, you get a nice little table in the background. That sort of feels like magic every time I do it. I'm not quite sure how that works, but it just does. So it's just one of those things that you accept with Tableau. So I'm going to go ahead and put their name on the detail. So now you can see where each person sits. I think that looks pretty neat so far. Let's see, I'm going to change my mark type to a pie. And what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to filter my measure names, and I just want the first two. And I'm going to go ahead and put measure names on color, and I'm going to put measure values on the angle. And I get my nice little pie charts. They're tiny, so let me make them a little bit bigger so you can see them. Okay, so that looks pretty good so far. So the blue is, I made the blue darker because that's the one I want you to concentrate on. So when you hover over, you can see Damiana sat in that seat 90% of the time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to duplicate this field and go ahead and make it a dual axis and synchronize, always synchronize. But on this one, I'm going to change this to be a shape. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take measure names off the color, take measure values off, and I'm going to put name on the shape. And just like that, their faces show up. So obviously I pre-assigned them, but I got to make it look good. And then I'll go ahead and shrink those down a little bit, and now they look like donuts inside of. So you get the idea. They like donuts. I made donut charts. Okay, yeah. Okay. I am definitely funnier than they think I am. Okay, so from there, what I did was I go ahead and I throw, what's the last thing I did? I don't need to worry about that. Okay, so I could then maybe put the name on the label and put the % of time they sit in that seat on the label and get rid of the halo, so say none. Okay, and then I can readjust them so that the names are below there, but it was kind of the general idea. So for the postcard, again, this one was pretty, I thought it would be pretty straightforward, but it ended up being a royal pain. So when I was doing this, the first time I did it, I drew the table backwards. So I had it going, I had the wider end at the left instead of the right, so tear that one up. The second time, the colors I chose for the donut charts didn't work very well. I tried to choose the same colors, but they just didn't look good on a postcard. So I tore that one up. And finally, I got the last postcard completed, and I'll show you what it looks like here. And the colors look good. Anybody notice what's wrong? The table's still backwards. Yeah. So I finally get the pictures right. I had my wife cut the pictures out for me, and I glued them on. I got the donuts right, and then I realized I put the table backwards. So I said, the hell with it. This is about learning. I'm not doing this again. I spent about 4 hours on this, so that was enough time for me. And then the last thing I did was I added little chocolate donuts underneath each person, so you could see how many donuts they would eat in the average Friday. So they are definitely donut monsters. Okay, so why should you do a project like, first off, do it with caution if you do.